Mr. Chair?
Are you rebuking this committee?
Why am I supposed to rebuke the committee? I am
You
not.
have been saying things for a while.
What?
You have been rebuking this committee.
You are saying that.
We're not blaming the Vice President on this.
I asked
Honorable
the
Marcoleta,
question.
we
I asked
are
the
not
question.
blaming
You do not have the right to
the-
determine that.
1 minute suspension is declared by the chair.
Proposal of Her Excellency Vice President Sara Duterte to take her oath in today's hearing in the conduct of inquiry in aid of legislation is an affirmation of her stand, her position during the budget briefing of the OVP. And this representation wishes to manifest that when the resource speaker does not take her oath, then it follows that whatever statement she will provide, we call it could not hold any water. That being not under oath, the same cannot be used as an evidence in any inquiry, in any proceeding, Mr. Chair. In other words, her refusal to answer in the last budget briefing of the OVP is tantamount to her stand in today's inquiry of refusing to take her oath. That is for manifestation, Mr. Chair. And with that, Mr. Chair, I wish to remind the committee, our esteemed colleagues, and the Filipino people of the constitutional mandate that public office is a public trust. When there is a question, we're bound to answer. We're bound to explain. As a matter of fact, no less than the Philippine Constitution provides, we are accountable to the Filipino people at all times. We are now confronted by the issue on confidential fund. And I wish to emphasize, ang confidential fund po ay pera ng taong bayan. And we owe it to the people to explain kung paano ito ginastos, saan ito napunta, and to be specific, sinunod po ba natin ang joint circular regulating the use of confidential fund. Mr. Chair, I wish to raise as well, to invoke as well, and remind our esteemed colleagues that pursuant to the separation of power, we, the Congress, is exercising the power to legislate. Under this power, we also have the power of the purse. We can amend, we can revise, we can approve, and we can disapprove the budget that was proposed to us by the executive. And I wish to remind as well that the best instrument which shows the power of the purse of the people is no less than the General Appropriations Bill, which is an embodiment of the allocation for the entire Philippine government, which is the result of the legislative process of the Congress. In other words, ang budget po ng ating bansa ay napapaloob din sa isang batas, saklaw ng kapangyarihan ng Kongreso, and that is the power to legislate. To be able to make sure that the power of the purse is properly exercised, we are granted as well by the oversight power. And that is to make sure that all our legislations, that includes the budget of the national government, the General Appropriations Act, are well complied with by our fellow public servants. And to make sure, and as a consequence of this oversight power, we have this inquiry in aid of legislation. So I just wish to remind the Filipino people, and that includes the OVP, ito po ay trabaho ng Kongreso. Busisiin ang budget. And not only that, to exercise the oversight power to make sure na yun pong ating mga nakaraang legislation that includes the General Appropriations Act, ay nagamit ng tama ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno. I hope that the OVP will be enlightened to address the issues instead of attacking this institution, of politicizing, and matters concerning politics, Mr. Chair. Third, Mr. Chair, we should be uniform in the application of our rules. If we are guided by the constitutional mandate that public office is a public trust, if we observe malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance in the LGUs, as a matter of fact, we have pending inquiry in aid of legislation concerning LGUs. Kung iniimbestigahan po natin ang Office of the Mayor, kung iniimbigastahan po natin ang Office of the Governor, by equality under the law, we should conduct an investigation as well to the Office of the Vice President. And I wish to thank the Honorable Valeriano for taking a stand before the plenary to initiate this inquiry in aid of legislation to address the observation not only of this representation, but of our fellow members of the Committee on Appropriations about the irregularities which we have seen already in the disbursement of fund, as a matter of fact, not only of the confidential fund, but even the regular allocation of the OVP. With that, Mr. Chair, may I proceed to my question for the COA? Kanina
Yes.
po,
But after your lengthy manifestation, you have
Mr.
already
Chair.
consumed 4
just
minutes.
one question,
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Just
Chair,
one question.
Yes, the Honorable Marcoleta.
May I offer a counter manifestation, Mr. Chair?
Later po, 1 minute na lang po siya and then
Kasi
I will
baka
recognize.
makalimutan yung continuity, yung flow ng discussion. I'd like to ask only, Mr. Chair, by way of manifestation, is there anybody who is questioning the power of the purse of Congress? Is there anybody who is questioning the legislative function and oversight function of Congress? Is there? Because if there is none, then we are not supposed to overextend the discussion or any manifestation because nobody is questioning that. And I think nobody could question that. Even the privileged speech of the Honorable Valeriano. I think the proper question there, the proper title is not asserting the power of the purse. We should not assert it because that power is inherent in us. Asserting or not asserting that power is of no moment. Yun po ay birthright. Yun po is inherent right of Congress. And let me make of record, the office of the Vice President, to my mind, did not undermine the power of the purse. When she personally came in the first hearing and presented herself, including the budget by way of a PowerPoint presentation, she made a presentation, Mr. Chair. And after that, she made a categorical statement that she said, I forgo, Madam Chair, I forgo my opportunity to defend the budget of the Office of the President by way of question and answer, and instead I leave it to the discretion of the House of Representatives on their decision to decide on the proposal as presented. This is a very respectful answer. Mr. Chair, I did not find any offensive remark in that particular statement. She gave the entire House of Representatives the entire discretion, the entire right to decide on the proposal she presented before us. Why would we blame her for saying that she disrespected Congress? No, sir. I think it was triggered by the fact that questions were asked in relation to the confidential and intelligence funds. To my mind, Mr. Chair, these particular funds were subjected to a notice of disallowance. But the notice of disallowance by its nature, by its very nature, Mr. Chair, is contestable. It is appealable. It is yet to be explained. And initially, as explained by the representative of COA, the notice of disallowance suffered by way of supporting documents, by way of non-compliance with certain requisites. What if the Vice President is able to provide all the supporting documents? What if finally she is able to come up with the requisites required in order for you to consider that all these funds are eventually allowable and they are not disallowed? And chances are she may be able to do that. Hindi po final judgment ang notice of disallowance. As a matter of fact, based on COA's own representation the other day, the Vice President received the notice of disallowance only on August 24, 2024, which means, Mr. Chair, the Vice President has 6 months within which to reply and make an answer. That is correct, Madam COA. So, 6 months is up to February 2025. We should give her all the allowance. We should give her the time because 6 months is 6 months. So why are we rushing to make a judgment? As a matter of fact, as I have already initiated earlier, Mr. Chair, when you said that anything we can discuss in this committee provided it is of public interest, and you said that intelligence funds and confidential funds are public interest, but I said because of our own rules, we should make a prior and preliminary determination that is directly and principally connected to malfeasance, misfeasance, or nonfeasance. We have not made that determination. How can we now begin questioning whether or not the intelligence funds covered by an initial notice of disallowance is already directly and principally connected with nonfeasance or misfeasance or malfeasance? Madam COA, how many agencies of government today are subjected to notice of disallowance? Do you have a number? How many agencies
Mr.
today?
Chair,
With all
Mr.
due
Chair,
respect
point of
to
order,
the
Mr.
Before
Honorable...
I,
But that is a question I will leave, and I will
Yes.
terminate
But-
my manifestation, Madam.
Yes, but I would like
Mr.
to
Chair,
respond.
this is still my time.
Yes, but I would like to respond to your manifestation, Congressman Marcoleta.
Parliamentary
Let
inquiry,
me.
Mr. Chair. Parliamentary inquiry
What is
muna.
the parliamentary inquiry of
I
the
would
Honorable
like to
Abante?
ask the Honorable Marcoleta, is he rebuking this committee?
What is the question, Mr. Chair?
Are you rebuking this committee?
Why am I supposed to rebuke the committee? I am
You
not.
have been saying things for a while.
What?
You have been rebuking this committee.
You are saying that.
You're not blaming the Vice President on this.
I
Honorable
asked the
Marcoleta,
question.
we
I asked
are
the
not
question.
blaming
You do not have the
the-
right to determine
1 minute,
that.
1 minute suspension is declared by the chair.
Move to suspend.
Ano ba? Ba't ayaw mo tumigil dyan? Tinatanong, ano ba gusto mo talaga? Ikaw, anong gusto mo? Ano? Ano? Sige. Ano? Gusto mong hopya? Eh, binigay sa akin tong hopya eh, di ba? Tama na, tama na. Isin na. Adi sa akin, ayan, kumain ka muna ng hopya. O, gusto mo bang hopya? Ako? O, hindi, busog na ako eh. O, sige, doon na. Hay, nako.
Before I recognize the Honorable Congressman Luistro, let me first respond to the manifestation of the Honorable Marcoleta. Let me cite Section 4, Rule 4, Section 1, last paragraph, which provides that the filing or pendency of a case before any court, tribunal, quasi-judicial, or administrative body shall not stop or abate any inquiry conducted to carry out a legislative purpose. What we are doing right now is we are doing our mandate. This hearing is in aid of legislation. So wala pa naman po tayong inaakusahan dito. The fact that the issue is still with COA and is still pending appeal, it does not stop this committee from conducting an inquiry in aid of legislation to conduct or to carry out our legislative purpose. So, yun lamang po. With this, I would like to give the... Ilang minuto pa po? Ma'am, you still have 1 more minute.
Mr. Chair, in response to the Honorable Marcoleta, this representation did not say that the OVP is questioning the power of the Congress. However, Mr. Chair, I wish to
Before I
state for the
recognize
record,
the Honorable
how else
Congressman
will you
Luistro,
interpret
let me first
her refusal to answer? How else will you
respond
interpret
to the manifestation
her
of the
refusal
Honorable
to take an oath?
Marcoleta?
I think, Mr. Chair, the
let
only
me
reasonable interpretation on her gestures is that she refused to participate in the investigation or inquiry in aid of legislation that we are conducting. Secondly, Mr. Chair, about the notice of disallowance, we take cognizance of the fact that this is not yet final and executory. As a matter of fact, the COA commented that the OVP has a period of 180 days, equivalent to 6 months to solicit to make an appeal for the purpose of seeking for a possible reversal of the ND. However, Mr. Chair, kapag ba may ND, bawal na bang malaman ito ng publiko? Kapag ba may ND, bawal na bang imbestigahan ito? And it is on this light that I invoke that public office is a public trust, and at all times, we are accountable to the Filipino people. In response to his comment about the possibility of the ND being reversed, I think I made a manifestation already in the last budget briefing of the DepEd. If in the event that the ND is reversed, in spite of having this inquiry already, the COA is not precluded. The COA is not prevented from sharing to the Filipino people that the OVP was able to justify, and therefore we are reversing the ND. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, I wish to emphasize that there is no law which prevents the Congress, which prevents the COA from discussing, deliberating on the subject matter of the notice of disallowance. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I still have a question?
I will give you 1 minute.
Para lang po sa understanding ng mga Pilipino, pwede po bang pakidistinguish in layman's term? Confidential fund from regular fund in 2 aspects. One is procurement, second is liquidation. Because we've been discussing about CF, confidential fund. The question is, naiintindihan ho ba tayo ng mga Pilipinong mamamayan? Now, I think it's high time for us to explain, COA, ano po ba ang diferensya o pagkakaiba? Confidential from regular with respect to one is procurement and second is liquidation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
COA, any representative from COA? Yes, Attorney Camora.
As to the confidential fund, it refers to a lump sum amount provided to NGAs, LGUs, and COBs for their confidential expenses, which expenses pertain to or are related to surveillance activities in civilian government agencies that are intended to support the mandate or operations of the agency. The audit of the confidential fund is based on the...
Can we explain on the process of procurement or disbursement? You said it is a lump sum fund. May procurement process po ba kapag confidential fund?
Since it involves confidential activities,
There is none.
There is no procedures on procurement.
No compliance to procurement law is necessary for confidential fund.
Yes,
There
Madam
is no
Chair.
posting,
Mr.
there is
Chair.
no bidding. Tama po ba?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
And with respect to the regular fund, we have to comply. In other words, the law on procurement and bidding has to be followed. Tama po?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Yes po, tama po.
Yes. Now let's go to liquidation. Ano pong diferensya ng confidential fund with the regular fund in terms of liquidation?
Mr. Chair, yung sa liquidation ng confidential fund is provided for under the joint circular. So, hindi po necessary na sinusunod namin yung sa regular fund.
Summary and in layman's term, ma'am, how do you make it more understandable for the Filipino people? Pagdating ng liquidation, distinguish natin CF from regular fund.
Mr. Chair, sa liquidation po ng CF, kung ano po ang required ng joint circular na documents to be submitted, yun po yung kailangan nilang isubmit, otherwise deficient yung liquidation nila.
Which is less compared to the regular fund.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Way
Mr.
less
Chair.
than the requirements for the liquidation of regular fund.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
In short, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, ano po ba yung mga requirements sa regular fund for purposes of liquidation na hindi nyo hinihingi sa confidential fund? In brief lang po.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I am only aware of the requirements ng sa confidential. So, may I ask the help of ano?
Mr. Chair, may I just manifest my request that I hope to hear a very clear explanation from the
Maybe we
COA
can
on our next hearing.
maybe we can address that question to the state auditor,
Yes, Mr.
Attorney
Chair.
Tomawis. Would you like to respond to the query of the Honorable Luistro?
Mr. Chair, for the information, for the regular fund, for the liquidation of regular fund, it is subject to the COA circular wherein there is a documentary requirements required to be submitted. Then for the confidential fund, I have no exact information because it is based on the another joint circular. So there are two circulars to be required to be complied with. The COA circular, which is the documentary requirements for regular audit or for the regular transactions, and for the confidential fund, there is that joint circular that must be complied with.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect to the COA, this representation is not satisfied with the answer. So may I request for a better and clearer explanation on how we distinguish CF from regular fund in terms of procurement, that is one, and in terms of liquidation, that is two. We will be looking forward, Mr. Chair, to listening to the discussion and explanation of the COA on our next hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman,
the Honorable Vice Chair Acop.
may I just ask some clarification, which is connected with the questions of the Honorable Luistro?
With the indulgence of the Honorable Junicio, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I know from COA or from DBM, doon po sa mga GA natin, magkahiwalay po yung provision ng intelligence at sa confidential funds. Di po ba? Would you agree with that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes. So, bakit po magkaiba? Bakit may separate provision yung intelligence fund, may separate provision yung confidential fund.
Attorney Camora, please respond.
Mr. Chair, saga din po yung difference actually po, which is ang intelligence fund po ay refers to those intelligence information gathering of uniformed and military personnel, and it has something to do with national security, while sa confidential expenses is for the civilian government po.
Specifically for what?
That are intended to support the mandate or operations of the agency.
Now, may I know if they are also required to submit reports of the utilization of these funds?
Intel funds po,
Both
Mr. Chair.
funds.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
To whom should they submit reports regarding their utilization?
Mr. Chair, as to the confidential funds, they need to submit for NGAs to the President of the Philippines, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and to other agencies to the Department Secretary. As to the Intel Fund, they submit their accomplishment report to the President of the Philippines.
Now, may I know what agency would look after the reporting of such? Sino po ang tumitingin kung ito'y nako-comply? Because I think this is part of the GAA, and the GAA is a law.
Mr. Chair, it is part of the required documents that they have to submit.
Sino po ang tumitingin na dapat nako-comply ang mga ito? Which agency of government? Kasi lahat po ng GAA may provision tungkol sa intelligence fund at saka confidential fund. It is always part of the GAA regarding provisions for the utilization of such. Di po ba? So sinabi nyo, it is required that they should submit reports. But who looks after the compliance of these agencies concerned?
Is it not the audit of the COA po?
It is also not the jurisdiction of DBM.
Mr. Chair, I think if it's on the utilization of funds, it's more on the COA.
Kaya nga po, it refers to intelligence and confidential funds. May reportorial requirements po ito. Now, who looks after the compliance of such?
Mr. Chair, kung yung sa liquidation po, sa COA po siya nagpupunta, yung reports po. And then, yung sa reporting agencies, it's the accomplishment report po of the
Kayo po
Intel
ang
and
nagsabi
Confidential
kanina
Fund.
na yung confidential fund, the reports must be made to the President of the Republic of the Philippines, doon po sa Senate President representing the Senate, at saka yung Speaker of the House representing the House. So, how do you determine whether this is complied with?
Part of the required documents is a proof of submission to the above agencies.
So, kayo,
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
kayo pala ang may jurisdiction nito na nagsasubmit sila ng mga reports in compliance with the provision of the GAA.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Kaya po, it's one of the required documents, yung proof po of submission.
No, nagpakalayo-layo pa tayo, madam. Kayo pala eh. Thank you, Mr. Chair.